Luanda, Angola. 1622. The Portuguese governor is about to play the oldest power move in the colonial handbook. He's negotiating with an ambassador from the African kingdom of Ndongo, and he's arranged the furniture to send a message. For himself, a grand chair. For the ambassador, a mat on the floor. Because in his world, chairs are for equals and Africans sit below Europeans. One problem, the ambassador is a woman named Njinga Mbande, and Njinga does not do floors. She looks at the setup, doesn't argue, doesn't protest. She simply signals one of her attendants, who drops to hands and knees, and Njinga sits on her attendant's back, perfectly level with the governor's eyes, and opens negotiations like nothing happened. The Portuguese thought they were meeting a subject. They just met the woman who would fight, outsmart, and embarrass the empire for the next 40 years. Stick around for how she got the chair story into the history books, because that detail might be the most Njinga thing of all. Welcome back to Roots of the Past, real African history, told with receipts. Today, Queen Njinga of Ndongo and Matamba, diplomat, general, survivor, menace to colonizers everywhere. Let's go. Njinga is born around 1582 into the royal family of Ndongo in what's now Angola. Fun fact, hiding in plain sight, her father's royal title was Ngola. The Portuguese heard it, slapped it on the whole region, and that's literally why the country is called Angola today. The colonizers named the country after the very throne they were trying to destroy. Hold on to that irony, it's going to age well, because the Portuguese are not in Angola to sightsee. They founded Luanda on the coast in 1576, and they are pushing inland for one thing above all, captives. This region is becoming the single biggest source of enslaved people shipped across the Atlantic. Entire kingdoms are being bled, and Ndongo is buckling. In the late 1610s, a few years of Portuguese campaigns drive tens of thousands of people into the slave ships. Njinga's brother takes the throne in 1617 and inherits a catastrophe. By 1622, he's desperate for a deal. He needs an envoy for peace talks in Luanda. Someone brilliant, someone fearless, someone who can play European politics and African politics at the same time. He sends his sister, and that's when the chair thing happens. So, the chair story. Is it even true? Here's what we know, and honestly, it makes the story better. It was written down decades later by an Italian missionary, Cavazzi, who lived at Njinga's court in her final years, and who told him the story? Njinga's own courtiers, possibly Njinga herself. Think about that. 40 years later, this is the story she's still telling about herself. This is her chosen legend, dictated to her own biographer. That's not just a power move, that's brand management, 3 centuries before PR firms. A modern biographer, historian Linda Haywood, treats it as capturing exactly who this woman was. Someone who simply refused, on a cellular level, to be seated below anyone. And the negotiation itself, fully documented. She walks out with a peace deal, recognition for her brother's kingdom, promises of Portuguese withdrawal. While she's in Luanda, she also pulls a move that tells you everything. She gets baptized, takes the Christian name Ana de Sousa, deliberately borrowing the governor's own family name. Historians describe her fate as flexible and strategic, a diplomatic tool to be picked up and set down as needed. She's playing every piece on the board. One catch, the Portuguese never honored the treaty. And 2 years later, everything explodes. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe. Unlike the Portuguese, that button actually keeps its promises. Now, back to the chaos. 1624, Njinga's brother dies suddenly. And here we hit a genuine 400-year-old cold case. His supporters, and later the Portuguese, say Njinga poisoned him. Others say he took his own life in despair as his kingdom collapsed around him. Historians still can't settle it, so we won't pretend to. What's certain is who benefits. Njinga takes power, elected Lady of Ndongo. The woman on this throne breaks every tradition, and everyone lets her know it. Rivals at home say a woman can't rule. The Portuguese declare war and prop up a puppet king in her place. She loses her heartland. And this is where Njinga reveals her superpower. It's not that she never loses. She loses plenty, and we'll get to that. It's that every defeat becomes a launchpad. Driven from Ndongo, she marches east in the early 1630s and conquers a different kingdom, Matamba, a state with its own tradition of female rulers. New base, new army. She welcomes runaway slaves and deserters from Portuguese territory, absorbs this fearsome military culture of the Imbangala, war bands, dresses in male clothing, and leads troops into battle herself. She will do this into her 60s, personally, on the battlefield, and then Europe hands her the alliance opportunity of the century. 1641. The Dutch, Portugal's sworn commercial rivals, seize Luanda by sea. Njinga doesn't hesitate. Enemy of my enemy. Welcome aboard. The alliance delivers her masterpiece. In 1647, her forces, fighting alongside Dutch troops, crush a Portuguese army and put their inland strongholds under siege. For one glorious moment, Portuguese Angola is on the verge of total collapse. But we promised you the honest version, so here it is. The year before, 1646, she had been routed at Cavanga. The Portuguese captured her war camp, her archives, and her sister, and in 1648, a Portuguese fleet retakes Luanda and her Dutch allies. Just leave, sail away. Good luck, Njinga. The Dutch abandoned her. Take stock of her position. Mid-60s. Allies gone. Enemies resurgent. Sister in enemy hands. This is where basically every resistance story in the colonial era ends. Njinga's doesn't. She simply switches weapons. From the sword to the pen. Through the 1650s, she runs a relentless letter-writing campaign, working missionaries and officials, negotiating from the strength of a kingdom she's spent a lifetime making unconquerable. And in 1656, Portugal signs peace treaty. Her sister comes home, her rule over Matamba recognized. After 30 years, the empire gives up and makes terms with the woman it could not beat. But before we crown her a flawless hero, there's a part of this story most videos skip, and we don't skip things. Real talk. Njinga fought Portuguese expansion for 4 decades, and her lands sheltered thousands fleeing Portuguese slavery. But she was not an abolitionist. That idea belongs to a later century. Slavery and the sale of war captives were the currency of power in her world, and Njinga trafficked in that currency herself. As her biographer, Linda Haywood, puts it, she was fighting to restore her kingdom and its position in the world as it existed, not to overturn that world. Flip side, a lot of the most lurid stuff you may have read about her, the cruelty tales, the harem stories, later gleefully recycled by European writers, including, I'm not kidding, the Marquis de Sade. That material traces back to hostile colonial sources. Even Cavazzi, the missionary who recorded her court stories, was openly prejudiced against her. Meanwhile, another contemporary who actually met her called her intelligent, witty, and charming. Strip away her enemies' propaganda and the sainthood, and what's left is more impressive than either. A ruthless, brilliant, endlessly adaptable stateswoman playing a losing hand better than nearly anyone on earth that century. She returns to the church in her final years, rebuilds Matamba into a trading power, secures her succession, and dies on December 17, 1663, around 80 years old, on a throne, still undefeated, where it's counted, never conquered. Here's the thing about Njinga's legacy. She never drove the Portuguese out. Colonial rule in Angola lasted 3 more centuries. So did she lose? Ask the Angolans who fought for independence in the 20th century and reached back across 300 years for a name to rally behind, hers. Today her statue stands in Luanda, the city where they offered her a mat. She's gone global too, a Harvard biography, a Netflix docuseries, 4 centuries after her enemies started writing hit pieces about her. She's winning the propaganda war from the grave, which, given how she handled her own PR through Cavazzi, is exactly what she'd have expected. Because that was always the lesson of the chair. Power isn't about winning every battle, it's about refusing out for an entire lifetime and to accept the seat your enemies assign you. For centuries, Njinga's story was told only by her enemies. Now you know the real one, so share it. Subscribe to Roots of the Past for African history with the receipts and drop a comment. What's the boldest power move you've ever heard of? Because I'm pretty sure Njinga still holds the record. The roots of the past run deeper than we know. See you in the next one.